Welcome to Beneath the Wing. Just like air passing over the wing of an aircraft provides lift, the people we meet can also give us lift in life by sharing their stories of strength and success, connecting us all. Beneath the Wing explores the stories of those connected with the Minnesota Air National Guard's 133rd Airlift Wing with a little humor and learning along the way. I'm your host, Wing Command Chief Mark Legvold.
Hello again and welcome to Beneath the Wing. Joining me today is Tyson Schnitker, former member of the 133rd Medical Group. Today's a big first for the podcast because I'm interviewing a guy who came in, served for a while, and then left our ranks completely for productive and hopefully happy civilian life. In fact, I think it really highlights an awesome story of so many men and women who join the military, serve their country with distinction and honor, and then bring the great stuff that they've learned to us in a productive place outside of uniform. So Tyson, thanks for joining me.
No problem. Thank you very much.
I'm also coming to you all on location. I'm at Scalvin Distillery in Brooklyn Park, Minnesota, and we're going to get to why that's important in just a bit. But we're sitting in this 1980s kind of retro in front of an old tube type TV, and you've created a great environment here.
Thank you.
So I mentioned your past military service. Let's unpack that a little bit. You had a rich experience in the military, both Army and Air. What brought you into service in the Army, and how did you end up going blue?
I guess first, just disclaimer, since we are on location, if there's any noise in the background, it's just people working or stuff going wrong. But what led me into it is that joining the Army is something that I had always wanted to do ever since I was a little kid. Went into the woods and played Army. My family has an extremely long history in the United States Army, dating back to one of my earliest ancestors came from Norway, enlisted in the Minnesota Volunteer Infantry, and then fought at Gettysburg for the North. Obviously, they took heavy losses, everything, but we've had people in the Civil War, people in. I've got a great uncle that died on just a couple days before the end of World War I. I've got a couple of relatives that unfortunately didn't make it through World War II, a few that did. My grandfather on my mother's side was a combat medic with the Army, served in Normandy on Omaha Beach. He didn't talk about it very much at all. I remember a couple stories from him when I was too young to, I guess, truly grasp what he had seen. And I think even at my age, I'd be unable to grasp what he had seen. My father served for 4 years back in the 60s. My uncle was in the 82nd Airborne, made a career out of that. He was in Desert Storm. I don't believe he deployed in the second Gulf War. And then I'm the only person of my generation that has served, and I think it kind of unfortunately ends at that. And so I'd always wanted to serve, but when I was in high school, I was an idiot, just a bad, misguided student, hanging with the wrong crowd, thought I wanted the wrong things in life, and so I didn't enlist. I decided I wanted to go into IT and make a bunch of money. Well, I hated IT, and then 9/11 happened, and the dot-com crash, and I went into construction. I thought about enlisting, the night of 9/11, but, I was too weak, too, scared of just doing it. And then went into construction, then went into sales, did well at sales, but was rather miserable at home. Who now is my wife, we've been dating since '99 in high school. In 2007, our relationship was kind of in shambles, and I hated my job for the most part, kind of hated my life, and just had this office space realization one day where, just has this life-changing experience. And I remember standing outside and seeing a Black Hawk flying overhead with the cross on the side of it. I'm like, that guy, or the crew has got the coolest job. Number one, they could fly around in a helicopter all day.
That is pretty cool, isn't it?
How awesome is that?
Yeah.
But number two, it's that gentleman up there, assuming it's a male, makes the difference, or potentially makes a difference between someone going home in a bag and someone going home to their family.
So you kind of had
And
that tie with one of your family members that was a medic.
correct,
right?
and my uncle that served in the 82nd was a medic as
Yep.
well, so kind of a long history of that.
Okay.
Um, and I just decided that I hate my job. I hate where I am in life. Whether or not my wife Mary, girlfriend at the time, whether or not we work out, I'm going to do what I always wanted to do in life. I'm joining the Army. And I was looking at, because our relationship was in a little bit of shambles, and I was looking at joining, full-time active Army and going to be a medic. And eventually, Mary and I were working things out as I was kind of making that choice, and that landed with the Minnesota National Guard. And I remember going up to my boss at the car dealership, and I said, Tori, I'm thinking about quitting. And he's like, well, what, use some expletives. And, what the F are you going to do? I'm like, I'm going to join the Army. He's like, BS, go back out there and sell a car. That'll make you feel better. And I did. And then about a day or two later, I went back. I'm like, yeah, I think I'm done. I just enlisted, and got the last things. I was, delayed entry program. I delayed my actual, leaving for basic by about 5 or 6 months. Gave me time to just get, some of my personal affairs. We had a house together.
That was 2007?
This was, the decision was made late 2007, and I
Sure.
enlisted almost 14 years ago in early January 2008.
Got it.
And got all my, sold my cars and sold anything that was just basically a material thing that I didn't need. Just complete reset. Went off to basic training, which was for being 28 at the time, I believe. That's a major life change.
It's a major life change, and you were an old man when you showed up to basic training, weren't you?
My girlfriend and I, we bought our house when we were 22. And, I moved out of, I got kicked out of my dad's house when I think on my 18th birthday, and rightfully so.
Happy birthday.
Thanks. I mean, it was much deserved. And, been out on my own, fending for myself, for that time. And then, that I'm going to basic training tomorrow. I'm at basic training, like, this is weird.
So you went from hating your life,
correct,
to Army basic training.
Yeah, just from hating life and following money, and thinking that money and getting more of it was going to make me happy, and I decided to start following what I wanted to do in life instead. And started off down at Fort Leonard Wood in Missouri for reception, and then they formed a bunch of us up and separated some of us out, and we're like, hey, you guys, you're starting basic training in a day or two, and we're like, hey, cool, and they're like, yeah, you're going down to Fort Benning, Georgia, home of the infantry, and a bunch of people are like, oh crap, I don't want to go to Fort Benning, it's supposed to be hard, and I'm like, bring it, like, I want the full Army experience of, I don't want, I know basic training back in the 80s was probably harder than basic training in the 90s, which was harder than basic training in the 2000s, all that. But I wanted, the best experience, and Fort Benning gave me that. It was all male at the time, which I very much enjoyed, and I am perfectly fine with females in the military. The nice thing with that is that there was zero distractions from the mission. Mission was to train. Especially the young guys that are there to impress other people, and females, they didn't have that distraction. I did see a lot of people change when we went to Fort Sam for medic school, but just that a unit without distractions was really cool, and obviously times change, and I get that. And
so you went through all that training.
Yep.
Fort Sam Houston in Texas. That's
Correct.
where you did your medical training.
Correct.
Then you came back to Minnesota, and a part of the Army National Guard, correct?
Correct. I was with the one of the 125 Field Artillery down in New Ulm, and
Beautiful New Ulm.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I was either down in New Ulm doing training or up at Camp Ripley, and I fell in love with Camp Ripley, kind of a love-hate relationship depending upon the exact day. But that was, and I got a job in healthcare on the civilian side. I worked as kind of a lead medical person right underneath a physician at a plasma center, a job I was very much underqualified for on paper, but they gave me a great opportunity based upon my military experience and how I interviewed, and I have the military to credit for that. I was being paid well above my pay grade for just an EMT.
Deploy with the Army?
I did. I went to Kuwait in 11 and 12. That was an interesting experience, just a lead up to that. I always wanted to deploy to war, whether or not I truly would have enjoyed it or not. Obviously, individual experiences may vary, but I always felt like I wanted to do something. And originally we were supposed to go to Iraq, and then that was changed to Afghanistan, and we were supposed to be doing a field artillery mission. It was supposed to be cool. We were supposed to be doing what's called the 888s, which is basically a howitzer that's a tow behind. And we're supposed to be doing that, like basically shelling the Taliban.
And you were a medic attached to that unit.
Correct. And I always went and tried to be out in the field blowing stuff up with the guys. More than like in an aid station. I never cared for aid station life. I liked being outside and blowing stuff up and getting paid for it.
One of the things I learned about you while we were sitting here before the podcast actually started is you're not a sitter stiller.
No.
Yeah.
No, I like doing stuff. When I was with the field artillery, so we it was a M109 Paladin was our platform. What that is for the listeners, it's a self-propelled, so it's a tracked artillery piece. It's all armored, all self-enclosed. Basically, it's a tank with an even bigger gun on it. Usually meant to shell stuff at up to 12 miles away to drop a 95-pound projectile. That's the bullet that actually leaves the tube is 95 pounds. And
that's got to be impressive to be around when it goes off.
It's impressive on both sides, both to be in it when it fires, to be near it when it fires, and to be at the observation point watching the impacts come in is super cool. And the accuracy of it is absolutely amazing. And you're not going to drop one on a car from 12 miles away, but you're going to be able to, after you get it a couple of rounds out of the tube and get it, the rounds walked into where you need them, you definitely wouldn't want to be anywhere near where a forward observer is able to see you and direct rounds on. And that was really impressive. And I spent a lot of my time in we called a big artillery piece as a gun, in the gun. And I'd be helping sling rounds. I'd be helping fire the unit. And I remember one time a sergeant major came out and he's like, "Well, where's the medic at? Why isn't he in his ambulance? Oh, he's in one of the guns." And he comes in. He's like, I think I was a specialist at the time. He's a specialist. What are you doing in here? I'm like, helping blow stuff up, right? He's like, well, what are you going to do if something goes wrong? And I told him, like, hey, Sergeant Major, if something goes wrong with one of these, the amount of powder and explosives we have in here, there's nothing to do. I might as well have fun being with the guys. But yeah, we deployed to Kuwait in 2011. And my unit, I was part of the Anoka, which was a detachment from the rest of the battalion. So the rest of the battalion, and the battalion's like, basically a company of group of 500 or 1,000 soldiers. And a company is more like 30 to 50. And so my company was up at Camp Airlift, which is the biggest base in Kuwait, and then the rest of the battalion was at a tiny little base called Camp Patriot, which was inside a Kuwaiti naval base. And they ran kind of the entire show there, and it was really nice being up at that bigger base because we were QRF there, and what that is, quick reaction force, which is we'd go do patrols in our armored Humvees with all of our rifles and ammo and stuff, which we thankfully never had to use, doing patrols and responding to anything that was perceived as a threat to the base. And the rest of our brass and everything was down at that Kuwaiti naval base, Camp Patriot, and
brass not necessarily being the thing that you make light bulb or light sockets.
Exactly. Your higher rank, which higher rank, no offense, are known for kind of going around and we'll just put it this way, of enforcing the standard, making sure people are supposed to be doing the right thing, and being away from that. And usually that enforcement, unless you're like completely wrong, doesn't come from other units. They just, you're not one of their guys, so they don't discipline you unless you're absolutely completely wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was a little bit relaxing. I was up there. I was a medic for 67
you
guys.
Just enough to stay within the boundaries of acceptable, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
And so I was a medic for 67 guys up there.
The only medic for 67?
We had another medic who, unfortunately for that gentleman, just kind of didn't make the cut. He was technically a medic, but he was the radio operator in the operations center at night.
All right.
And I was referred to as Doc. It's one thing in the Army. Once you're accepted by your Joes and they trust you, they start calling you Doc, which you're definitely not a doctor. But it's a term of respect.
Sure.
That I meant a lot to me. In the Air Force, unfortunately, you don't get as much of that because you're not, you don't have that, in deep with your Joes. And but I was there if something went wrong, which occasionally did, and usually it was something pretty minor due to sports related accidents or something. But hey, go get Doc.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's who I was. They'd come bother me at just about any hour of the day for whatever. I remember one time a guy woke me up because he was wondering if he had athlete's foot, and I'm just
middle of the night. That might be an emergency.
That didn't go over well, but
so you rounded out the deployment.
Correct. Got home in May of 2012.
Okay.
Decided I worked, volunteered under a dermatology PA while I was on deployment, who let me do a lot of his minor surgical procedures, removing skin tags, ingrown toenails, doing biopsies. Some actually pretty in-depth stuff for being just an EMTB on the civilian side.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed that. My wife does skincare. She's an esthetician. And I thought, well, I always wanted to open up my own business, didn't know what I wanted to do, and said maybe we open up a skincare practice, and I'm the PA, and she does kind of everything else, and maybe we make a career out of it. So I started going to community college to knock out my generals,
Sure.
to then in thoughts of eventually becoming a physician's assistant. And long story short is that the idea to start a distillery just popped into my head, and I had all of my deployment savings. I think I had $50,000 saved up in the bank, which is not a lot of money, but it is. And I was going to use that all for, school, and like, well, I can either use that and start a business at the right time before all the other big players get into it. Basically, like, the chance of being ground floor making money on eBay. There's still money to be made on eBay. It's just a lot more difficult than it used to be. And
let me ask you
I decided
a
to
quick
quit
question
school and
while you're there.
do that. Go ahead.
You almost had a guaranteed super stable, easy income with a lot of hard school before it. And then there's this, where we're sitting, that is full of risk.
Really good question.
How did you get there?
I make some dumb decisions sometimes. I always say opening a distillery is one of the dumbest things I've ever done. Did it work out? Yes. So far, knock on wood.
Well, was it luck?
Yeah, luck, hard work, right timing, which plays into luck. Yeah, I do not dismiss luck one bit. I met my wife. I'd known about her. We lived down the block from her. I was a bad student in high school, and I got kicked out of class from a Russian studies class. I got kicked out of class. I was sitting in the hallway, and then my wife, we took a bunch of photography classes that we were in together. We just never talked, and I wasn't in this class, and she just happened to be walking by. She's like, "Hey, Tyson, why aren't you in this photography class? You were always good. Why aren't you in this?" I'm like, "I didn't know it existed." And it was yearbook. And, you know, it's the beginning of semester, so I walked down to the counselor's office and managed to, you know, change and then join that class. And my wife and I started meeting. Pure luck. So sometimes luck works out for you in the better, sometimes in the worst. And, you know, it definitely helped with starting the company. It just felt right. I started getting interested in it. I'd been making like an aged cocktail, and the laws said if you are going to, you know, sell this commercially, you need to be a distillery. And I just started going down that path and generating more interest in it, and said, I think this is the right time.
That's about the same time that you switched from the green to the blue. Also.
Correct. So in 2013, this would have been 13 when I was really, you know, starting to get serious about starting a distillery.
Yeah.
And I was still with the Army, and the Army was my last unit. Had unfortunately, one thing you have in the military that you also have in the civilian sector too, is that you can have, like, you know, good leaders. Some of my best bosses in the world have been in the military, and some of my worst bosses in the world have been in the military. And so I had a couple of the worst ones in the Army at the time. And that was making life tough, but also the Army's what's referred to as the op tempo, basically operational tempo, which is, you know, National Guard's supposed to be 2 weekends a month, 2 weeks a year. We all know that's a little bit of a joke. You know, sometimes you get some 3-day drills and like a once a year 4-day drill sometimes. Well, the Army was basically 3-day drills was the norm, and then 4-day drills was starting to become the norm, as well as your 2 weeks of annual training. Plus, we're going to send you for a week here, a week there, a week there,
and the training
and
the studying off time
and constantly being up at Camp Ripley. While I always thoroughly enjoyed blowing stuff up, that didn't work out too well. And I was thinking about getting out at the time, but I wasn't ready to hang up the uniform, because being a soldier is something I had always dreamed of doing. I had a lot of pride in that, and still do. And then I remember in military, in the Army, I went to on the what's called NOREX, it's Norwegian Troop Exchange, that's done every year between Minnesota and Norway, where they take a handful of troops from Minnesota, send them to Norway, and vice versa. And I was selected to go to Norway in 2010, and absolutely loved that. But I met some people from the Air Force, and the Air Force people, like, we're getting, you know, like our platoon sergeant was from the Army, and we're getting like marched around this and that, and Air Force, like, man, we don't do this. And I remember talking to some of them, and they really, you know, they really enjoyed what they did with the Air Force. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to reach out to, her name's Alicia Wilkins, and I'm going to reach out to her and see if she does like the Air Force and stuff. And she did, and she set me up with a recruiter, and I went and talked to the recruiter, and I thought she was just dishing out all these, you know, everyone hears stories about recruiters and lying, and you know, all these dirty recruiter lies. That she's like, oh yeah, you're gonna be, you know, home just about every night, and basically no annual training, and, like, you know, deployments are basically voluntary, and
your
this
Army
and
brain is going, these are all lies.
and you're going to be staying in a hotel if you do go somewhere. And yeah, I'm like, God, you're just like just a dirty lying recruiter. And I'm like, well,
I'm sitting here with this many years of experience going, all of that is true.
Exactly. And I'm like, well, if even one of these comes true, it's an upgrade from my current situation with the Army, especially looking at starting a business and everything. I'm like, okay, I can do that. So I enlisted as a medic with the Air Force. I would have liked to try and do something else, like, you know, be air crew or something, but just taking time away to go back to, you know, basically the trade school of the military.
School, yeah.
With starting a business, just doesn't work. And medic was just basically a straight through transition. But shortly after joining the Air Force, I realized that she wasn't lying to me at all, that all this stuff was true.
So you joined a specific unit. You joined our medical group, and then you joined kind of the more, I don't want to call them more infantry, but you joined a different branch of our medical group.
Correct.
That is supposed to do search, rescue, and recovery on domestic operations. Right?
Correct. I originally joined, I wanted to be a flight medic on a C-130, and then just, so I started out with the the unit called the 109th AES, Aeromedical
Right.
Evacuation S. It's amazing how
It's a
fast
squadron.
That's it. It's amazing how fast some of the acronyms and stuff. Like the other day, I couldn't remember the unit that I was with. I'm like, oh geez, someone was asking me. I'm like, I sound like a stolen valor person where they ask, what unit were you with? And I'm like, I don't remember.
The one in camouflage.
Exactly. So started off wanting to do that, and then quickly realized that I don't have the time for this, and thankfully Air Force is much more flexible than at least my units with the Army were, as far as like, okay, that's not working for you, we'll try and find you a better home. And being in the clinic at the medical group didn't interest me at all. I like being in the field and being in the suck, getting
Not
dirty,
a sitter stiller.
doing cool stuff.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so they talked to me about what's called the surf, and I'm like, what is that? SURF? What's that? And they're like, basically you're going to be like rappelling and like, climbing through rubble and all that. I'm like, oh, that sounds pretty awesome. And so surf was CERF. It's the most military thing in the world, which is an acronym within an acronym.
If only we would figure out how to do something like that.
Exactly.
Yep.
So the C stands for CBRNE, which is chemical, nuclear, biological, radiological, and high yield explosive. And so that's the C in surf. And then so it's the CBRNE Enhanced Response Force Protection or package.
Yeah.
And
in other words, it's a lot of folks with a lot of stuff to do a real specialized mission if something big and bad happens.
Correct.
In the civilian sector.
As I described it, it's that we were the group that was created probably after response to 9/11, where if something like 9/11 but worse happened, some people that don't necessarily make the best choices in life are the ones that go in there. Like if 9/11 happened with a dirty bomb where it's radiological,
right,
biological attack, some guys got to go put on a suit and go in there and look at it and go, man, I hope this suit made by the lowest bidder the government could find is going to keep me safe. And let's effing do it.
Yeah.
And that's
let's go save some people.
Exactly. And so it's involved like a lot of using heavy demolition tools to breach through concrete and to do rappelling and shoring up buildings that are potentially collapsed. Thankfully, never had to use. We never had to deploy in that capacity, because I always said that if we did deploy, it was an extremely bad day for a lot of people.
For sure.
I did that up until I got out in January of 2021. Yeah, so a little bit over a year ago.
And here you are.
Yep.
Still not a sitter stiller, but you are a distiller.
Correct.
I've been working that pun in since we started.
Yeah, it's no, that's very good. Not a sitter stiller or sitter stiller, but a distiller.
You can put it on the wall in here. So, what did you learn from your military experience that allowed you to become successful where you are here?
Really good question. I learned a lot about myself. I guess that was one of the important things. I was always a confident person, but a confident idiot, I guess you could say. And
I'm going to use that, a confident idiot.
Yep. There's nothing worse than a confident idiot. Being dumb is okay. Being an idiot is okay. Not everyone is Stephen Hawking and really smart. One of the most dangerous things is a confident idiot. They're just going to go out and do stupid stuff. So the Army, especially because, that's what molded me in basic training and deploying and all of that. Air Force absolutely played a role in that as well. Taught me a lot about myself and what I was capable of, and just how to act and get stuff done, how to focus, just, basically who I am. Took away a lot of fear in my life, fear of unknown and uncertainty. Even to this day, 13-ish years later, when I go to do something that I think is scary, I think back to, stuff that I thought was pretty scary in basic training. We had what's called, I don't know if they still do it. We had combatives. Basically it's entry level how to grapple in basic training. It's basically, as the drill sergeants told us, just enough. We teach you just enough to get your ass kicked at the bar.
There you go.
And
give you the confidence to do it.
Yep, you're a confident idiot to go think you can take on the world, and then you find out a lot of people are a lot tougher than you are. But part of it was what's called the clinch drill, which is you've got to go and try and get a certain you grab onto your drill sergeant in certain ways to where you can basically at least hold on to them in a position where they can't hurt you easily. Basically in the Army, it's, give a chance for your buddy to come along and help you out. And the clinch drill, the drill sergeants were talking this up for a long time, and, it's Fort Benning with a bunch of males, and, they're like, these are big dudes. And, oh, Private, I'm waiting on the clinch drill. We're going to put on the boxing gloves. And we're going to knock some of you out, we're going to break some of your noses and stuff. I'm like, man, they're just talking this up to scare us. They're just going to give us little love taps and everything. And they're just going to let us get the clinch and everything. And the first 5 minutes of starting that combatives with the clinch drill, I knew I was very wrong. Some kids' noses got broke. A few of them got knocked out. A lot of bloody noses. And I got to go up against, the biggest drill sergeant. That's what I wanted to, is that biggest challenge. And he came at me just swinging as hard. They were all swinging as hard as they could, but he hit me a couple times really good. And it was just, I don't like this. I'm afraid I'm going to get knocked out, but I have to go up and secure that hold on him. Otherwise I will fail at this.
Right.
And I did it. And, I still think back to that. I was terrified. So, he's beating the hell out of me.
Yeah.
And, but thinking back to stuff like that definitely helps. The military, a member of the press asked me this 5 years ago, and I said, what, out of all the jobs that you've done, like I said, I've done construction, IT, medical, out of all the jobs you've done, which job has prepared you most for your job here as a small business owner, as a distiller? And I told him, without a doubt, it was the Army. I said, how did that prepare you? And I said, well, number one, learning how to work, that I can work 36 hours straight without taking a break, be out in the cold, hungry, sleep deprived. I know I'm capable of that. Now, I don't think I've hit 36 hours here straight before, but I've gone over 24 hours straight working here many times. An 18-hour day is no big deal for me at all. I don't like it, but it's not a big deal. Thankfully, the Army, showed me what I'm capable of in that regard. And for relatively little pay, I reinvest all of my money, for the most part, back into the company. And the Army and military gave me that ability to do that, knowing that I could. And also the stubbornness that, guess we got to figure out a way.
So that stubbornness and that ability to just kind of embrace the suck and work through it, work hard to achieve that goal, and then have the confidence to get in there. But you and I, prior to the podcast starting here, we talked a lot about the people that work for you here.
Mm-hmm.
And when we come back from the break, we're going to talk a little bit about another thing that the military taught you that has made you successful here. So for those of you that tuned me out at the beginning, I've been talking with Tyson Schnitker from the 133rd Medical Group, formerly, and he is now the co-owner of Scalvin Distillery, and we will be right back. Stick around.
Hey, this is Jeff Sprick, the Retention Office Manager at the 133rd Airlift Wing. First off, we want to thank you for your service and your hard work. Serving isn't always easy, and what you do is very meaningful, so thank you. If you're serving or you're coming up on your ETS, please reach out to discuss options. And if you're accessing this podcast by Facebook, there's a great resource linked above for you. Phone number is 612 713 2032. 612 713 2032. Thanks.
Hey, welcome back to the second half of the podcast. I'm joined again by Tyson Schnitker. We're here at Skalvin Distillery in Brooklyn Park. It's the middle of the workday. It's not even lunch yet, so we're having a great glass of water.
Unfortunately.
I know. And I actually have to go to the office after this, so I can't even get a to-go cup. Kidding. Right before we left for the break, you talked a little bit about some of the skills that you got from the Army. Hard work, a degree of stubbornness, recognition of the confident idiot, and understanding yourself.
Correct.
But now you're running a business. You have employees that you manage, a sense of customer service, and a focus on really, really good stuff here.
Absolutely.
How did you learn how to lead from the military that was specific to the military, that people in selling cars or working in a medical office don't get?
Yeah. So a lot of it was looking at my leaders and recognizing qualities that I either wanted to be like or qualities that I didn't want to be like. Those bad leaders that I spoke about earlier, those influenced my leadership style every bit as much as the good leaders, because I don't want to be like that person.
So what makes a good leader?
It's a very tough question. You have to really tough question, because it almost comes down to the individual event that, or situation that you're having to lead. You have to understand the capabilities of your people, both what they know they're capable of and what they don't know they're capable of, what their limits are. People are like an engine. They have a red line. You need to discover what those people are capable of, what their red line is. Maybe you exceed that red line a little bit, but then you recognize that and you pull back. You can't run an engine at red line, maximum revolutions, and expect it to last. The same thing as a person. You can't.
How have you been doing with that when it comes to your employees here, or even when you were in the military, recognizing when somebody was getting to that red line?
That's where you just have to be a good listener and you have to be doing the exact same work that they are. Here a lot of times I'm washing dishes, and I'm washing dishes as fast as I humanly can. And sometimes they're making drinks as fast as they can, or doing prep as fast as they can, and being in there with them. That's what I always enjoyed about my position as just an E5 with the Army and then the Air Force, is that I was in the trench with those troops, and really seeing what they're going through on a day-to-day basis. But you have to be, it's that fine line between working them too much, working them, hard and at that red line, and then just also knowing where the appropriate level below that limit is. We need to know that if we need to, we can operate at this level, but that this is a comfortable level where employees are happy, work gets done, and it's a truly a good balance. And it's hard to say what that is and how to discover that.
So let's look at January of 2022.
Okay.
And how we've been operating for the last 2 years, and some of the struggles that we've had in the military, and that you've had probably owning and operating a business, where a lot of the personal interactions, the time with people has been so limited.
Absolutely.
We can't see half of our faces anymore. Most of the meetings we do are digital. How do you overcome that when you're leading people?
Improvise, adapt, overcome.
That sounds like a military thing.
It definitely sounds like a military thing. It's definitely hard. I mean, just even from interviewing people and having a mask on, both parties, not being able to see truly what their facial expression is, body language. And people are already uncomfortable enough typically going in for an interview. Because a lot of people just don't interview well, and they've got that 15 to 30 minutes to try and make an impression on me, but then I've also got only that amount of time to try and decide if I want that person working for me, and it's very difficult just even on that end of things.
Okay, I'm sorry.
But then everyone's got their own comfort level with COVID and everything, and it's one of those things where me as a leader, I can't decide what makes somebody else comfortable and what doesn't. It's something where we have a very open environment here where I tell everyone if there's something that makes you uncomfortable, let me know. If we like to have fun and tell jokes just the same as anybody else, but I do understand that everybody has limits. If we push one of your limits, if we went too far on a joke or playing around, or we touched a subject that shouldn't be touched, let me know, because that's the last thing that we want to do.
Did you learn that sense of empathy and caring for other human being in the Army or the Air National Guard? There's a right answer here.
I believe it would be in the Minnesota Air National Guard.
Yeah, like
no,
that.
I don't know where that came from. I think it's from when I hit my head a bunch of years ago. It just kind of popped in there or something.
Fair enough. Hey, how many employees do you have now?
I think we've got 5 right now, and then we are potentially hiring 2 more. They're going through kind of a basically an industry first date, where they come in, work a shift. We see if it's a good fit for both parties, that they mesh well with us, but then we also mesh well with them.
Kind of a try before you buy.
Correct.
Yep. You and I were talking before the podcast started, and you looked really hard at healthcare benefits for your employees.
Absolutely.
And taking good care of them, paying them an honest wage. That's a hard decision to make as a business owner, where
Absolutely.
You're looking at a bottom line. Why does it make sense for you to offer good things to your employees?
From a business perspective, it doesn't. It's a sign that I don't have any investors. It's my wife and I. We don't have anyone pulling strings and saying we need to be better with our money. And running a good business doesn't always mean being a good person. Business is very zeros and ones. It's Excel spreadsheets, money coming in, money going out. That's running a good business. And then being a good person is, you're giving away all your money. You're Mother Teresa, and that's where we try and strike a balance. I want my employees, if they get sick, to be able to go and get whatever it is treated, be it if they hurt their finger, hurt their toe, or they need, mental health. All of us at times in our life need to go talk to somebody. And unfortunately, in our country right now, it's accepted that basically you go bankrupt if you get sick. And a lot of people can't afford. I'm terribly sorry for my alarm.
That's okay.
I thought I had my phone
as long
silent.
as it still doesn't blow up.
It shouldn't.
Keep all the timers on you want.
It shouldn't. I'm going to stop that instead of snoozing it. My apologies. It's because I turned my sound back on during the break. It's the people I have working for me. They don't wear a suit and tie. They're not, they don't. I think some of them have degrees, but they're not working in a corporate office. But just because they're not there in a corporate office doesn't mean they're not every bit as a professional. They've been spending 10 or more years typically in their field as, bartending and food and beverage, as professionals trying to be the absolute best that they can. I think it's time in our country that we recognize, doesn't matter what you're doing, if you're trying to be the best that you can be in that industry, that you are treated as a professional. I don't care if you're cleaning toilets. If you're trying to do the best, and I'd say that's the most important person in this entire building. So the custodians that come in every night and clean.
We all realized that was super important over the last 2 years, where suddenly cleanliness was not just something that somebody else did and we took for granted.
Oh yeah, well, if I don't show up for 2 weeks, I mean, like when I got COVID back in October, I wasn't here for 10 days and the business got by. Everything was relatively fine. You don't have your custodial team come in for 3 days,
Everybody notices.
Absolutely. And, it's people that are working hard, no matter what their job is, need to be taken care of just as much as, people working at, higher up positions at corporations.
So what's harder, leading people or making vodka?
Leading people, definitely. Making vodka is very straightforward. It's just very long days. Each person is different. Each situation is different. It's sometimes you have to have that extreme level of empathy and caring about people, and that comes first. And sometimes the mission comes beyond that. Sometimes something just has to get done. I don't care what your feeling is towards it. It needs to be done. Same thing in the military and same thing in the civilian life.
Sure.
Toilet has to be plunged right now, and don't care what you got going on. That's top priority. And, other times, like, I can say, hey, let's talk about it. I know we got all this work we got to do, but I can tell something's been on your mind.
Yeah.
You're not the same person I normally see.
That good ability to shift gears between emergency mode and everyday mode, and the everyday mode, we ought to be taking good care of people and having that sense of collegiality and empathy and how we do things.
Absolutely.
Every so often, for a fire chief, every so often you got to throw a white helmet on.
Oh yeah.
For a cop, every so often somebody's got to be in charge and run the incident. It just, there's two different sides.
You got to know when to flip that light switch.
That's the trick, though.
And you got to be able to flip it just as quick as the light goes on and turn it off.
Okay, so second half here, we're going to play quick answer. I ask you a question. Engineers, when I interview engineers, they're terrible at this because they like to analyze it. So we'll see how you do. I will give you a question. You got to answer it in one word, maybe two, and then we move right on to the next one.
Sounds good.
Okay, you ready? Place on Earth you'd most like to visit.
Japan.
You've been there twice already.
I know.
Okay. Beer or wine?
Beer.
Run DMC or Limp Bizkit?
Oh, Run DMC.
Attaboy. Best pizza topping?
Just one word, huh?
You can go 5.
I can go 5. I'm going to make a lot of enemies with this. Jalapeno and pineapple.
Okay. Weirdest garnish for an alcohol-based drink?
Weirdest garnish. Weird can be good and it can be bad. That's a really tough answer.
And you're already over 5 words.
I know. We'll just say garnish that needs to go away. Clothespin.
Okay. Person you'd most like to meet?
It's going to be an uncomfortable pause. It's going to need to be edited here. I'd say probably my, my grandfather, the one that was the medic in World War II, so I could get to know him better.
Last one. Best video ever shared on Tosh.0?
Definitely the one of me on the rappelling tower.
Unpack that one real quick.
Exactly. Talk about it.
Yep.
So this is when I was deploying in 2011. It was May of 2011. My unit, the detachment from Anoka, Charlie Battery, we had a couple, I believe they were air assault instructors and, rope masters.
Yeah.
And we were at the rappelling tower at Camp Ripley, which is a 45-foot tower, not terribly tall as far as towers go. And we were doing regular rappelling, where we take a piece of rope and create a harness with it and then hope it holds and then go rappelling. And I've rappelled a bunch of times before. I hate heights, but I've rappelled a bunch of times before and no big deal. Well, then they started saying, well, who wants to learn how to do it Aussie style, so Australian, where you go face first. And my life and especially military career, that sounds awesome, and I want to do it. Like throwing hand grenades, shooting machine guns, like tanks, aircraft, all of that's awesome. Heck yeah, I want to do Aussie-style rappelling, even though I'm terrified of heights. So I did it once successfully off of what's called a Huey rail on the side, which is a different method of rappelling. So when you're on a rail, basically it's like a metal bar that sticks out from the side.
Yeah.
You start out face first, and you slowly lean and kind of let out that line. And when I'm rappelling, I hate heights, like I said. When I feel that I'm secured to that rope, when I truly feel that that rope has me, no big deal. And when you start out on the rail and you can just let out your own line as you gradually lean forward, you can feel that rope go, and cool, you get yourself to about a 45-degree angle to the ground, and then you jump and let out line, and then slow yourself down before you impact the earth. And it was cool, really cool. And then they said, okay, who wants to like do the running down the wall thing? I'm like, sign me up.
Not a sitter stiller.
Exactly.
Yep.
And so this was different. So up at the top of the tower with my toes sticking off the edge, and said, stare at the horizon and look forward. And, thankfully it was captured by a couple different cameras, and I put it up on YouTube, and then Tosh stole it, and I didn't get paid a dime for that. Different story, different day. But, I'm up there, and I remember my legs shaking and trembling, and, trying to lean forward, but I can't feel that rope. There's slack in the line. I looked over at the sergeant. I'm like, hey, Sergeant, can we get the rope tightened up a little bit? He's like, needs to have slack in the line so that when you make that transition, it's like a little bit of a free fall. It's like kind of sucks you to the wall, and then you go down. And he said, my legs are shaking. He said, stare at the horizon, and take a step forward. And I took a deep breath, and I heard someone say, trust your equipment, you're good. And next thing you know, I'm like coming to at the bottom of this tower. I'm looking around. There's a person up at the top yelling at me. It's Army thing. He's just yelling at me for not following instructions, but I couldn't understand him. And there's all these people around me, and I don't really know who they are.
You fainted, didn't you?
Yes, passed out at the top, looking at like frame by frame of just basically my legs buckling at the top, and then it impacted my head pretty hard. And I came to with total amnesia. I didn't remember being in the Army. I didn't know if I'd been married or not. And our lieutenant had to call my wife at her work once I was able to, spit it out who she was, where she worked, and stuff like that. But he's like, yeah, Mrs. Schnitker, I'm, Lieutenant so-and-so with the Minnesota Army National Guard. Your husband was in an accident. And, like, that cut out.
Oh, my.
And, a few seconds later, it's like, he's okay. But I had total amnesia. I didn't remember anything to do with that. And I don't regret doing that in a heartbeat. I've had a couple lingering effects from it, which are very minor. But it was a cool experience, and I'd do it again in a heartbeat.
Well, hopefully it stays off Tosh.0 if it goes bad.
Exactly.
Man. Okay, your menu here has had some really interesting drinks, including an ink teeny, squid ink, wasabi, and akavit. Who designs that stuff? And I mean, you and I talked a little bit about how purposeful you are in the design of the place and how committed you are to just being here for your customers. You only let 40 in at a time.
Correct.
I read your COVID protocols, and they're like super strict so that your customers feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
But who comes up with some of the creative things?
Everybody does.
Yeah.
The Inktini was cocktail that didn't last on the menu long. It was created by who was supposed to be our first bartenders. We hired a couple of women from the bar industry in 2019, and then we brought them to Japan so they could see the cocktail experience that we got there. And then when COVID came, they decided to get out of the industry. But that was one of the drinks they came up with. It was a really cool drink.
Creativity in all of your
100%.
Yeah. How do you do that?
I just there's no handcuffs here. The drinks have to be good. They have to also have a level of visual appearance.
Yeah.
They have to look good, smell good, taste good. They have to. One of the hardest things that we do with drinks here, and one of the difficulties is that with Minnesota Distillery, all of the alcohol has to be our 5 products: vodka, rum, akavit, habanero-infused rum, and bourbon. Those are our 5 products. We can't use a liqueur off the shelf. I can't use scotch. I can't use tequila. I can't use, Aperol, anything like that. I can't even use most bitters because they're considered outside beverage alcohol. And so that's the difficulty. But the other difficulty is that with what we do here, how do I take it up I don't want to be average over here. I want to be above average. And how do we take a cocktail and make it above average?
So you were talking about your, we business side of things, military side of things. We talk about continuous improvement and the process that it takes to get there. And you boiled it down before we got on the podcast here on what you tell folks that work for you when you send them to another distillery, or another tasting room,
another bar or anything.
Yes. What do you ask them?
I usually tell them, give me, 2 or 3 things that we do better than they do, but also tell me 5 things that they do better than I do. And the way I look at it is business, and I don't mean this in a wrong way, but business is like war. You have winners and losers. The winners go home with a little bit of money in their pocket and a business the next day. The losers go home without a business and broke. And if I look at what we do here as that we do the best, no one else is going to touch us. That's like going into war and being at an outpost in Afghanistan and saying, well, the Taliban have got nothing on us. We've got night vision and, optics
That
and
sense of
all
arrogance,
this stuff.
right?
But you have to look at what the Taliban does well, is that you're in their backyard. The dumb Taliban, for the most part, got killed long ago. The ones that would stand up there and try and get into a, like a Wild West shootout with us, those guys got killed a long time ago. And the ones that are there, now we're not there anymore, but the ones that we were fighting there at the end, they've grown up with our presence. They've seen us every single day for 20 years. We've just been going there on rotations every, for a year, every 4 or 5 years or whatever.
Right.
They know us better than we do, and they know our capabilities, and recognizing that these, for the most part, and I don't mean this in a bad way, uneducated mountain people, no, they're very smart, and you can't underestimate the things that they do well.
So that's an interesting tie to how you work with your folks to identify what you're doing well, because that's an important thing. Everybody should know what you do really, really well, but then recognizing what another organization or group or another person does better than you, and just having that sense of humility, but also a sense of pride in what you're doing well, and that allows for a creative process here.
Yeah, a lot of times you don't know what you're not doing well until someone tells you. Because it's very easy to look at yourself and go like, I'm awesome. But the reality is there's, there's things that aren't awesome that we could improve on if someone would just tell us or look at it a little bit deeper.
Okay, so here we are. We're at your distillery. I might as well do our drinking question.
Sounds good.
Here we go. Doc, I'll just call you that today. Another Doc.
I appreciate it.
Dr. Mary Edwards Walker. Do you know who she is?
I don't.
Wow, surprised. She's the first woman to receive the Congressional Medal of Honor.
Oh, dang. I should know that.
Civil War veteran. And I use air quotes on veteran because she was actually working for the Army in a civilian capacity because they wouldn't let her join. She was captured, accused of being a spy. When the war ended, she ran for public office before women could even vote, pushed for women's rights, and finally was really active in the temperance movement. I'm sure you'd get along.
She lost me
well
at the temperance one,
I
but
know.
everything before that was awesome.
So here's the drinking question. If she came in here for a water, which is what I'm drinking, what would you serve to her to change her anti-alcohol stance?
Well, first, if she wanted water or some other non-alcoholic beverage, we would do the best. We would serve her the best water or the best NA beverage that we are capable of. We don't look at anything as like anything beneath us. There's too many beverages like snobs and alcohol.
That's such a good business owner response.
No, there's so many even unfortunately people in the bar industry where like, if you like an appletini, like it's looked at as like kind of a tacky drink. No offense to anybody, but like, who cares? That's what makes that person happy. Like my favorite two cocktails are Jack and Coke. That's my relaxed cocktail, and then also it's a Miami Vice. It's a strawberry daiquiri and pina colada blended, frozen. They're awesome. And I love like.
You know who does not like a Miami Vice? Honestly, who doesn't?
Yeah, like
communists.
Exactly, communists.
So what would you serve her to change your mind?
So if she was open to drinking, whatever someone's reasons for not drinking are just fine with me.
Yeah.
And I'd never persuade anyone to drink that doesn't want to drink. But if she wanted to say, okay, impress me, show me what I'm missing out on, I would ask her what her favorite flavors are. Does she want something carbonated or still? Does she like bitter? Does she like sweet? Does she like fruity or tart? And I would start going down that checklist to find out what I could potentially make that she would enjoy. One question we get in here all the time, and I understand why people ask it, but I really hate when people ask it, and they say, well, what do you like? What's your favorite thing on the menu? Well, my favorite thing might not be your favorite thing. Like I might be the kid that eats paste, right? That eats Elmer's glue. Do you really want to ask what I like, or what better is say, okay, hey, I'm in the mood for something bitter but a little bit of sweetness. I'm okay to like carbonation, but I don't like pineapple. What would you suggest? And I might say, okay, yeah, we have this. I think you might like it.
My follow-up question to this, and you kind of
Mhm.
answered it, is what would you talk about to keep the conversation going? It just sounds like, hey, Dr. Mary Edwards Walker,
Yep.
what do you really, really like? And she'd probably give you an answer. It probably would come down to a nice, cool, tall glass of water or something. But,
Exactly.
Okay.
And that question I'd try and ask her is
Yeah.
I'd just say, I like trying to understand why someone thinks the way they do. Michael Scott, why are you the way you are? Whatever he says to Toby. And I'd want to find out why. And I understand the temperance movement, everything that led up to that. We had some dark history in America revolving alcohol, of course, both during and before and after Prohibition. But try and find out why she's the way she is.
In the last couple seconds we got left here, what do you miss about the military, and what would you do differently?
I really miss the camaraderie, especially like the when you're in the suck, when you're just long day, it just sucks and it's cold and you've got whatever mission and you're there with the people that really make a difference and you really truly enjoy being around. Military, you're sometimes with people day and night, nonstop, and you really learn who you like and who you don't like. I really miss that. I also miss blowing stuff up and doing cool stuff a lot.
Yep.
Where else in the civilian world could I get paid to throw hand grenades? I did that and got paid for it. As a 40-year-old man, I still think that's pretty cool.
That is pretty cool.
What would I change? If I could just literally change anything, I would make the military a little bit more like it was when I enlisted, which is more in the field training, less computer-based training, less computer files. When I first joined, your training file was a physical document.
Mhm.
And you could go through and check off that this training was completed, just initial, done. I'm definitely not saying that sometimes training was signed off as being completed even though it was never done. So that way you actually had time to do real training, trying militaries. Trying to make sure the bad guy gets killed and trying to make sure you don't get killed. That's what it all comes down to. It's why you're wearing camouflage.
I remember the days of the paper stuff, and it really was a facilitated conversation between you and another human being instead of a computer screen and a mouse.
And sometimes that needs to happen, but then also going and updating, say, 20 people's training files could possibly only take 20 minutes. Sometimes it takes 20 minutes just to log on to a computer, and then that system is down, and I do not miss that end of things. I think the military does need to get back to its roots of making sure that, and it's, that the military is performing its job of keeping America and its service members safe, and making, keeping the military, and it's the part of the military that we all know is why it's there, but making the military, keeping it is the most lethal force in the world. And you can't do that with a bunch of computer-based training.
Yeah. Service comes in a lot of different shapes and sizes.
Correct.
And careers aren't necessarily 20 years. As we wrap it up, I wanted to just take a minute to say, to you and anyone else that's listening that has done some time and served their country, thanks. Thanks for serving. Thanks for what you're doing now.
No problem. Thank you.
I mean, this is such a cool place, but just the heart that you are bringing to the people that you're employing and the people that you serve here, you can just see that sense of service. So thanks for your service.
No problem at all.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
I'd also like to say thanks to Kyle Savdi, Amanda Ritchie, Sarah Brown-Jager, and Lindsay Rickel for helping me do some research prior to coming and interviewing you. And as always, thanks to Amy Lovegren for your expertise and support in getting these podcasts out. And Tyson, last but not least, thanks for joining me on Beneath the Wing.
Hey, no problem at all.
I'm looking forward to coming back here during drinking hours.
It's been a pleasure sharing my experience. And anyone thinking about enlisting, do I have like 2 minutes?
You got one.
I got one. Anyone thinking of enlisting, take those experiences, even if you're infantry in the Army and just a door kicker, understand you get leadership ability with those people. Big companies are willing to pay good money for leadership, public speaking. Take it and run with it.
Tyson, next time we need a recruiter, we're bringing you back. Take care, everybody, and we'll see you next time on Beneath the Wing.
Thank you.